So welcome to Impact Mindset. This is the podcast for entrepreneurs and professionals, bringing you the best ideas and people to help grow your startup in today's marketplace. Each week, we deliver interviews, tips and tools to inspire, train and support you in your entrepreneurship journey. I'm your host, Bruno Fon. Today with me is Kobi Ampoma. Kobi is a human resource professional with almost 20 years of experience. He is the owner and director of JNL Recruitment and a strong believer in diversity and inclusion. In this sense, a key element in Kobi's work is supporting companies with recruitment efforts with diversity-focused hiring. In addition to founding JNL Recruitment, Kobi is talent acquisition lead at Otrium, an online fashion outlet marketplace featuring designer stores on one app. Mr. Kobi has also served as head of talent acquisition at Travix International and similar roles with companies serving clients within Europe and around the world. Besides his regular day-to-day work, Kobi is passionate about serving others, making the world a better place, and a mentor to Black students and young professionals. Kobi was born in Ghana and as a toddler accompanied his parents who sought refuge in the Netherlands in the 1980s. Welcome to the podcast, Kobi.
Thank you for having me, Bruno. It's a pleasure to be here, to talk to a brother of mine. We recently just met, but I'm happy to be here to share, my experiences and, some thoughts on different topics today.
Right. Yeah. Great. So, thanks. I'm just wondering because, we've talked before, and just for the benefit of my listeners, just to kind of provide an overview of your personal background and your career over the years.
Originally, I'm from Ghana. I came to the Netherlands when I was 11 years old. And the reason why is that my father was a political refugee who got his asylum in the Netherlands. And in 88, 2 years later, he could reunite with his family. And his family consists of myself, my three sisters, my mom. We started, building, let's say, a life in the Netherlands. We came through Amnesty International. I was thinking, running out, that there are great organizations in the world supporting people who will have a refugee background in landing in different situations to better themselves.
Right.
And in the Netherlands, when we came, obviously the first priority was to make sure that we learned the language, which was new, and try to integrate in the Netherlands. In school, and my dad and mom were very big advocates in making sure that you do your schoolwork, focus in class, and not try to be a joker. So that has always been something very important for the family, and it also it's from actually generations to make sure that you can stand on your own 2 feet when you have mature, grown, and have some educational background. I went into HR, and the reason why is that I wanted an education where people were the focus of whatever we did. So, in conversation with a few deacons, I enrolled into Hogeschool van Amsterdam, where I actually, graduated after 4 years in human resources, with a few internships. I was also a basketball player, so I was a basketball athlete. Right. And lucky enough, I had a sponsorship with Nike for 2 years, which was great. But then I also got the opportunity when I was done with my studies to actually apply for a position at Nike. Started my career there as an HR representative, as they call it. And in the broad sense of the word, an HR representative is somebody who, is part of the HR team and is answering different questions that come, to the HR team. So right. Either being, my paycheck is 10 euros more or 10 euros less. I would like to, request for a transportation card. I'm sick. What do I need to do? All these questions, came to HR box, and I follow up on that. And by understanding the basics, on HR, I evolved into what we call international mobility, which was supporting Nike employees who were being transferred in different parts of the business and different parts of the world, and then coordinating all of this for them. And that's where I actually fell in love into recruitment, because, by doing that job, it actually taught me, hey, you can actually have a conversation with people within your organization who may fit a different role within the part of the business for them to evolve. So that's where my whole recruitment, let's say, experience, and the first time I was involved in things like that. And I took a gravitas to that, because my personality is also somebody who is always willing to connect, somebody who's always willing to help. So that really helped me.
How did you choose human resource? Was there something in your background or in your educational career that sort of got you into human resource specifically? Because I kind of like see your trajectory of in your professional life, you sort of decided to choose human resource as a career path, rather than, say, when you worked at Nike, Nike, you would have chosen, say, to go with the sports side of with the athletic side of your life.
I think what I learned, especially in the Netherlands as well, especially because my parents were not from the Netherlands. If you look at the educational system, there are a few choices that you need to make as you progress in the educational system. And I think it's very difficult, for, young kids to make a decision on, which career they would like to pursue. So for me, it was much more about, what do I actually like? What do I have a passion for? And I figured out that, if I could do any professional job where the essence of what it is evolving around people, I think that's the right start and the right direction to do. Because my mom actually was a banker. My mom started her career in banking. I also have a few aunties and uncles who started their professional career there. So that was also my trajectory. So I have a degree in the banking and insurance as well. Right. But then I figured out, that's not really what I want to do, because obviously evolve around numbers and analytics. But I was like, I want to do something around people. So that's what I did. And to be honest, I also spoke to like 3 different deacons from different schools. And I think 2 of those conversations both indicate human resource is, a direction that I could do, because it evolves very around people.
Right, and the second time, this is the second time we are speaking, and I realize that Kobi is a real people person, and I think that that is sort of the kind of trajectory that you would love, talking with people, interacting with people, and sort of getting to know people more and finding out what they are, and being a kind of a catalyst to finding what is best for them within the workplace.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, when you gain a more experience, and also when you find out about, what your strengths and weaknesses are, you try to translate into something that you are passionate about. And for me, I was always, the person who brought people together. I always have people coming around my house. I always have, saying, hey, Bruno, maybe you need to talk to this guy because they can help you with that. And also I'm very approachable. I think that's also very important in being, in the HR field. Nowadays, if you talk about HR, it's like, the policy makers, the police. So you need to have some kind of, I think, approachability towards that people feel comfortable approaching you, talking to, you about different subject. You may not be the subject matter expert, but at least you can guide them through where they need to go. So that has always been something that I love to do. And it has helped me also along the way, because, when you are somebody who can connect, people also, appreciate you and are also willing to do things for you in a positive light.
Right. What change have you seen within recruitment and human resource development over the last decade?
I think, when you look at the different changes in human resources, initially, human resource was seen as a function that was very administrative heavy, right? So, you talk about, making sure that people get paid, making sure that, people get registered in the right way, people have the right insurances. So very administrative heavy. I think what has happened over the last maybe 2 decades, and more so maybe in the last decade, is the evolution of being a much more strategic partner, right? So you hear this a lot about, human resources and having a seat at the table. What that means is that, you are a strategic partner that can help an organization, move into the right direction. So I think a lot of companies have seen the added value that the human resource department can play. And as a result of that, more and more leaders are getting a seat at the table, so they call. And if you look at it, let's say in the past, there was not always, human resources part of the C-suite, right? Now you have chief HR officers, you have head of people, have people who are responsible for the people and culture. So you have seen a lot of, evaluation when it comes to the human resource profession. And I think, having a seat at the table, that is very important.
Yeah, that's a very dramatic change, right? Moving from the functional to the strategic. Has there been any sort of, besides the change in the role, has there been any pushback to the kind of role that human resource departments have within organizations? Because the understanding is that the human resource department within a specific organization is really responsible and answerable to the C-suite, and not really dealing with those on the work floor. Has that trend changed, or is it sort of the same?
Well, I think it's changed a bit. At the end of the day, human resources is for the organization, right? So the company, so the human capital. That's very important. However, I think human resource is doing a good job in educating leaders that the human capital that they invest in terms of salary, plays an incremental part in shaping, evolving, and directing the business as well, right? So if you don't treat your people well, it will have a negative impact, either in revenue, either in culture, either in people leaving your organization, and obviously recruitment. That's why I think recruitment is also a very important pillar in an organization, because recruitment is, the key responsibility within the recruitment / talent acquisition is bringing in talent within your organization, right? And you need talent to be able to, either generate revenue, or if you're in the growth part of your organization, or what they sometimes say is, the business is in a transformation phase, and typically is becoming much more mature, where you may need different types of people. So I think, the traditional way of looking at HR, having a seat at the table and being a strategic partner, is also helping organizations think differently how they should utilize their employees. And as a result of that, if you do a good job at that, that translates into, an organization where people want to be part of, where there's a lot of collaborativeness happening, where, it will also generate bottom line a revenue stream, or an improved revenue stream. So I think that's how I would answer that question.
Yeah, because I think that is even more relevant in this age and time, when the market is becoming more and more mobile, as it were, and the landscape of the workforce is changing, of course, because of the expansion of the internet and online work. I think that is changing quite a lot. What is then the role of, or what would be, say, a redefined role of human resource department within the context of the workplace that is changing so much, or that is sort of having a combination of the online work and say, offline face-to-face work? Is there any change in the approach?
I think so. I think, originally, and obviously you have a few companies who are have started and are doing a great job at it, is facilitating the flexibility when it comes to your workforce, right? So thinking about, what is needed for somebody to do their job. Is it physically presence that important? Or is it creating a platform where people can collaborate, where people can meet, where people can discuss, where people can come with creative ideas? And obviously, you see a lot of companies where the physicality of physically being present was important, but over time that is really changing because, when you need talent is not always available in your market, right? It's also a huge investment to bring talent into your organization. So I think companies has looked at, okay, if we need talent, what's the best way to go about it? And I think what you're seeing is that, the internet is providing a platform in how we can communicate with each other, where, information flow is fast paced. It's not, 24 hours before you get a response, right? It could be maybe 5 hours or 6 hours or even quicker, because you have people in different parts of the continent that have access, let's say, to internet or to different platforms where you can communicate better with each other. So I think that if you look at technology has, helped organizations speed up the process. And I think that, companies also need to facilitate flexibility in what is important to the employee.
Yeah, that is a key aspect of it. And I was wondering, how do you use, say, the social media platforms in your recruitment effort? Do companies or do your clients, because your clients are the companies doing the hiring and you're doing the acquisition, how do you utilize social media tools to sort of source talent for your clients?
Yes, I think social media is very important. Typically, what you hear is that companies talk about the employee value proposition, right? So, and what does it mean? Is, how can we translate what we are doing in a company externally? Because if you don't know a company, then you don't know how it is to maybe work there, right?
Right.
You don't know what the culture is like. So what typically companies do is they think through, the different persona that you can encounter within the organization. They're building how it's best to communicate with, their audience being a young population, middle, older. It depends on obviously the business you are in. And then where are your talent then, communicating, or what kind of platform do they use to receive information? And then you figure out, is it Twitter? Is it Facebook? Is it Instagram? There are different platforms that you can utilize. There's also a lot of job boards where, talent people are part of the community so that they can receive information and share information and reshare information. So I think social media is very important for companies because it's translating the message of, if you are interested in working for us, this is how it looks like. These are the people who work there. This is how we like to communicate. But also they share a lot of the values, what kind of values is important to the company. And then you as an individual can think about, does it resonate to me? Is it the same purpose that I want to get behind? So I think social media is definitely very important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm wondering, right now we have this idea of people having an online persona. And so you definitely kind of see the expression of individuals, what it is that they do online. They create a kind of an online persona. Does that have any effect sometimes in hiring? Because I'm always curious. For example, you see the lifestyle someone has on Instagram. And as an employer directly, I would be thinking to myself, I wouldn't hire this person.
Yeah.
But you, as a consultant, a talent acquisition broker, you might actually suggest, no, not so.
Yeah. Well, I think it's I can go different ways with my answer, but what I would say is that if you look at social media, I think every individual needs to use that wisely, right? Because social media is an extension of yourself, right?
Right.
So if you're portraying something which potentially could have a negative effect on yourself or being hired, maybe that's not a smart thing to do, right? And I'll use an example of, I've heard, unfortunately, recruiters go to Facebook and, scan somebody's profile and have seen some inappropriate behavior, right? So as a result, people are then not hired for an opportunity. And I think obviously that's very hard. But I also think that, as an individual, you need to think about, what am I putting out? What kind of perception do I want people to have of me? And if you don't want people to have that perception, then you need to make sure that, your platform is secure, that you don't have any people who potentially would be at an employer linked to you. So, for example, myself, one of my rules that I have is that if we are working together at a company, unfortunately, you cannot be part of my social media platform. And in my case, I'm talking about Facebook or Instagram.
Right.
The reason why is that two reasons. One is I am part of the HR team, right? So it's always very sensitive. And secondly, I think that is my personal space, right? So I don't want, per se, people in a professional setting to be in my personal space. And sometimes it means that I'll lose maybe 20 people on my platform because I'm working at a company that maybe I'm not joined. But that's my personal rule that I have in place. And some people understand that, and some people are like, oh, that's a little bit too extreme. But that's how I've set the boundaries for myself.
Right. It's important to have those kind of boundaries. You know? And for you, you have that as a standard for yourself. I was wondering your work at Otrium. How does that translate to your personal philosophy of how the workplace should be? I know that you are a diversity and inclusion facilitator. How is that expressed within Otrium?
Well, I recently started with Otrium, and in my conversation with them, I spoke to one of the co-founders, and he mentioned in his conversation with me that diversity, inclusion, and belonging is very important for the organization, and they have partnered actually with an external party to look at different topics they could address, right? So I was very excited to hear that, right? And my responsibility of helping them bring in talent. We are going to see how we can blend those elements together from a perspective of what is important to the company and also what I bring to the table. I have a diverse portfolio of candidates. I have a diverse approach into how I recruit. And I would like to highlight, different minority groups that are out there as well, who are, in my opinion, also very talented. And I was very, very happy to see, at the African Diaspora Summit, which was coordinated by OMAC and our brother Kimo, is that I saw a lot of professional, Black professional talent, in my opinion, for the first time, all in one place, which is a beautiful thing to see, because these are all professionals who take, obviously, their work very seriously. And very talented in articulating what is important to them, how they could contribute to organization. So obviously, being connected with OMAC and also, learning about new people, that is also something that I bring to any organization, not only Otrium, but also a lot of organizations that I potentially will partner up with in the future.
Yeah, definitely. And you just mentioned the African Diaspora Summit. That's where definitely we met, just for the benefit of my listeners. That's definitely where I met Kobi. And that is why I decided to say I would like to have him on the show, because I was so impressed with the participation at the African Diaspora Summit. And I thought, well, just like yourself, this is one of the few times that I've seen so many of our professionals of Black background, African professionals get together. And it sort of it gives me a sense of joy, actually, to really think in terms of, well, in a place like the Netherlands, if we think in terms of, say, if we are in a predominantly Black nation, Black state, well, it's not doubtful that we have Black professionals coming together, but in a predominantly white environment, to have this caliber of professionals getting together is really, really encouraging. And you mentioned that in your work, you sort of bring in your philosophy of diversity and inclusion. The question is, what are the kind of challenges that you face in that approach?
Well, I think initially, I've been in the talent acquisition space for, I think, almost 12 years now. And, the challenge that a lot of companies face is that they don't have, where do we find these talents? So in terms of platforms or, networking groups, I think that the last years, a lot of, especially, Africans or Black talented individuals are creating much more groups and also being represented in a way like, hey, we are professionals, we have degrees, we can contribute to an organization. So I've seen that more. And in my particular case, because I'm Black, because, in my opinion, I got a chance to start a life in the Netherlands, I make an effort to reach out to those different communities and say, hey, guys, I'm here. If you need help, I can support. If you want to apply for an opportunity for a company I'm working for, reach out. We can have a discussion. And I'm trying to also utilize my voice in being a role model, because, there's not a lot of people, let's say of color, in, senior positions in organizations. Right. Because if you see that, then you aspire to be one. And I think that, that is very important. And I talk about it in one of the podcasts where we talk about mentoring. I was fortunate enough to be mentored, 18 years ago. So I've also included it into my approach. I think that, mentoring also helps you, have a conversation with somebody who can share different insight that you may not have thought about, to give you a different perspective. So I think all these elements also help, and that's what I'm trying to do as well, is, share my knowledge, share my experiences, so that, people who are coming, let's say behind us, don't have to go through those hoops, and have maybe an easier way on getting opportunities that they also deserve.
Yeah, and this is the heart of what we are trying to do also, to sort of provide a platform for people like yourself who serve as role models to the younger generation, to sort of really, for them to know that they can aspire to greater things in the Netherlands and in Europe, wherever they are based. And now, talking about mentorship, how do you sort of encourage young people to move away from the sense of being victims, mm-hmm. To one of being or having the ability to define their role, having the sense of accomplishment for themselves? Because increasingly I see the attitude of, listen, we are victims of racism, we are victims of systematic racism. How do you get them to have the understanding that, yes, there are these issues within society, but you do have the agency?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it comes with a few things. One is that you need to make sure that you're prepared, when an opportunity comes. So, if you play the victim, it's not going to get you anywhere, right? So one of the things that I learned from one of my friends is, you need to prepare for an opportunity when it comes, then you're ready. And what I mean by that, especially if you're talking around talent acquisition, is when you apply for an opportunity, make sure you understand the role, right? Sometimes you may know somebody working at a company. It could be 2 lines away from, knowing, reach out to them. There's a lot of people out there who you don't know. If you show interest, that you are willing to at least reach out and say, hey, listen, I see that you're working for this company, and you guys have a few positions that I'm interested in. Do you mind jumping on a call with me for 10 or 15 minutes to get more information? I doubt that a lot of people will say no, because first of all, you work for a company. typically they're hiring. There's also a lot of companies have referral bonus. So if you refer somebody to the company, there is a bonus component linked to that. If you work somewhere and you are happy where you are, you're also an ambassador. So any opportunity you have to share with somebody else, I would doubt that person wouldn't want to do that. So I think that I tell people all the time, don't be afraid to reach out. Secondly, sometimes you are even friends with people and you don't really know what they do, right? So right. I have one of my friends, and it's a long time ago, he said, Kobi, I think I want to be a sales manager. I said, okay, do you know what a sales manager does? He said, well, I think so. I said, do you know who in our friends is a sales manager? He's like, no. I said, okay, you need to talk to this guy because he's actually a sales manager for the last 3 years. You can have an easy access to him, talk to him about what the job entails, and right. This will potentially help you when you apply and get an opportunity to have a conversation. So sometimes people don't realize that a lot of things that they actually want is in their circle. If not, widen your circle. So I think that's what I'm trying to say as well. And, you need to make sure, coming back to the preparation piece, is that there's a lot of things that can be done in terms of research, right? And I think that sometimes people just don't do that because they think, oh, I'll do it the day before. But you need to practice. You need to really practice. And I talk about this all the time. Is when you show interest in a job or an opportunity, you need to think about what is your added value, because people are hiring talent who are going to add something.
Right,
right. You don't know that, but you need to think about it and articulate it in the right way. So I tell people, talk to your mom, talk to your dad, talk to your sister. Ask them the question, hey, mom, what do you think I'm good at? Hey, dad, what do you think I need to improve? They may have easy examples for you that you can use for your job interview. Because, when you are actually at the job interview and they ask you these questions, it's very hard to then come on the spot with examples. And actually the people around you can help you do that.
Right. I was wondering because, why is there a sense of exclusion with especially with black students and black professionals, let's say, mm-hmm. in terms of being integrated into the workforce? Is there an actual do you have a sense of an aspect of systemic discrimination within the workforce, or is it simply a question of individuals assuming that there is actually systemic issues for which they are prevented from being part of the workforce?
No, I think systemic racism definitely exists, and the way that it can come across, especially in the, for example, in the application process, is that people like to choose profiles that they are familiar with. Either your name is not recognizable, or you didn't go to a certain school, or your background doesn't per se fit what you think they're looking for. I think it's something that really exists because I've been part of teams where it's not always intentional, but you go to what right? And I would say that if I look at myself, the reason why I maybe have a little bit of open-minded is because of my background and being a refugee, given a second chance. So all these elements play a role in how somebody is. I think what people need to realize is that by doing that, you are excluding a talent pool that you could have available to you. And also, I do think that when you look at, let's say, the talent looking for opportunities, they may not apply for opportunities at companies that don't see representation. So that also happens, right? So if I'm applying for an opportunity at a company where I don't see anybody who looks like me, or there are people in senior positions that don't look like me, I may be hesitant to do that. So then it comes to what is the company also communicating? Are they communicated the inclusive? Are they communicated that diversity is important to them? And how does that translate in their messaging, right? So I think it's a combination of a few things. But the way I tell people is that if you look at the talent acquisition function, I do think you need diverse representation. Because having a diverse representation there also opens immediately, in my opinion, the talent pool. Because and not to highlight my brother, but I think he's doing a good job. He's building a community. So any time that I would have opportunities that I would share it in the OMIC community, because I know there 20 or 30,000 talented people also looking for opportunities. So I think it's where do we advertise opportunities? I think that's also very important.
Yeah, whether the companies do have a concerted effort to reach out to a wider pool of talents.
Yes.
Like I say, if they don't communicate that, they are actually restricting themselves to just a very small pool of possible talents.
Yes. And what do you hear all the time? There's lack of talent. There's a scarcity of talent. There's a war for talent. So, my approach to a lot of companies would be, hey, if there's a war, how do you widen your pool? How do you make sure you are tapping into the different individuals that are out there? And to be honest, we're talking about qualified individuals. We're not talking about people who are not qualified, right? So I think that's very important. So companies need to have a strategy, but they also need to translate those strategy in the efforts, and they need to hold people accountable who are potentially blocking, let's say, initiative that is being taken. Because as a recruiter, I may work with the hiring manager who is saying, "Oh, I don't want to see this profile." But then you need to be strong as a recruiter to say, "Why don't you want to talk to this candidate?" Because what we are looking for, actually, he or she is ticking the boxes. So I don't want to stand, and then it could be an uncomfortable conversation. So that's I think something that recruiters also need to be cautious of, or stand their ground from that perspective.
I think on both ways, even if a client, a company that you work for example, or tells you, listen, Kobi, we don't want this specific kind of profile. Well, they are honest to tell you they don't want this kind of particular profile. The question always I would ask is, why not?
Yeah.
I mean, like you would ask them, of course, why not? Do they ever give you any good reason why they wouldn't want a specific profile?
I want to say that they will give me a reason why. I think, I've matured in my last 5 years to really have a conversation with managers. But also, I think, the people that I've hired within the organization who are Black or are colored are also doing great work. So then there's also, a track record that shows that, the people that I've brought or supported, bring into the organization are also doing a good job, right? So you also have something to show for, right? You cannot fight with people if you don't have anything to show for. So I think that's one of the challenges, and especially this year, people are starting to have uncomfortable conversations, right? Generally speaking, but also in the workforce, also in terms of the talent acquisition space, you need to be able to challenge your manager because they're doing themselves a disservice by excluding a talent pool that could potentially help them as well.
Yeah, indeed. How would you define diversity? Do you have a very broad, I'm curious about the broadness of your definition of diversity. Do you look at it only within a cultural context, or do you look at it in terms of, say, ideas and skills? How would you place that?
For me, it's a combination because, I've worked for companies where we have 60 nationalities. So you cannot say the company is not diverse, right? Or that you see that, we have leadership, female leadership at the top. So you cannot say there's not diverse. But the way that I will position diversity now is that, in my opinion, there's a lot of untapped talent from a minority background. And in a lot of conversations that I have with them is that they're indicating, I'm not getting a response, but a lot of people are also not getting a response, although they may be a minority, right? So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to encourage them. I'm trying to to tell them that, your opportunity will come. Just make sure that you will stay prepared. And in my opinion, by highlighting those, talented from a minority background or a black background, what I ideally would like to do in a real example is that, when I present candidates to managers, I tell them that just one of these candidates is a wild card. So they may fit 60% or 50% of the profile. There may be a match, but based on my interaction with this individual, I can see that they are highly motivated. I can see that they really have done their due just in terms of understanding the opportunity, networking with people, trying to get extra information, people who are working in the company. And all I'm saying is, hey, it's not that you have to hire them, but give them at least an opportunity to have the conversation, right? So that you can leave the conversation thinking, hey, did I speak to somebody who is motivated, highly motivated, and can bring something different maybe to the table? If the answer is yes, then you likely may give them an opportunity. So by doing this more frequently, I try to open up managers' minds or hiring managers' mind in terms of also looking at different talent pools as well, right?
Right.
And fortunately for me, I've been successful in a few of them. So the next time you have to work with a hiring manager, it's then a little bit easier, right? But the first time is always challenging because you need to, use your influential skills in making sure that they understand where you're coming from. Typically, people don't. So when I share my personal story with them, they're like, oh, it also opened their eyes. And I also think that, when it comes to diversity and inclusion, is that everybody has their personal story. Mm-hmm. And that personal story is either very close to you or you're trying to make an impact. And if you're trying to make an impact, what are you trying to do to contribute towards the diversity and inclusion conversation? So that's how I look at it.
Yeah, and I remember your quote the last time we had this conversation. What's your personal story in relation to diversity and inclusion? That's a very important question individuals have to ask. Yes.
Well, my personal one, you mean?
No, yeah. I mean, this is a quote that you sort of had as a kind of a guiding, as it were, to not only employers but to us even as Africans and Blacks.
Yeah.
Your personal story in relation to diversity and inclusion as a guiding principle.
And I really believe that, because if you don't have a personal story, then you likely would not be motivated to contribute towards that, right? And generally speaking, we talk about people having passion for what they do. So because I'm passionate about my recruitment, I would like to do everything around that. I'll read a book around recruitment. I'll go to, conference because I'm passionate about it. So if diversity and inclusion is important to you and you have a personal story attached to that, then you also make an effort to, create the change that we also seek.
Right. We talk in terms of your the job that you have as a recruiter, as a talent acquisition broker, within the African community itself. Do you see a lack of initiative, or do you see a sense of the desire of starting something themselves? I'm talking about the entrepreneurial culture within the African diaspora community, where in the absence of employment or integration within the workforce, do you see a sense of, well, we would start something ourselves despite the fact we can't have a job within the workforce? Do you see that kind of an effort?
Well, what I see is that there's a lot of people who create opportunity from themselves if they're not given that opportunity, right?
Right.
So that is something that you do see. I do think that obviously being an entrepreneur is not for everybody, right? And I also think that a lot of companies can benefit from having talent within the organization. So it can go both ways. I think, being an entrepreneur comes with a certain mindset, a certain grind that is also very important. You need to make sure that, you are, learning from your mistake. You are upskilling your skills, because typically in a working or a corporate settings, you have opportunities to develop yourself, right? Or the company will facilitate something. In entrepreneurship, you need to figure those things out. So
Correct.
you need to also hold a mirror, once in a while in front of you and say, hey, what am I good at? What am I less good at? And who can I partner up with when it comes to this thing I'm trying to do? So I see it both ways. For me, it's much more about taking a step back and say, you know what? Looking at the last maybe 2 or 3 years, the company that I've worked for, I think I can make a bigger impact by, starting for my own, bringing my perspective, bringing my insight that I've gained over the last 20 years in helping companies. And I think also I would like to do a few things. So one thing is, the recruitment part of it. The other one is, being a thought leader or speaking and sharing my experiences. The other one is mentoring and coaching. So, sometimes you're going to do everything once at a company, and you try to, do it. In my case, now that I'm an entrepreneur, I have the flexibility of doing different things at the same time. So, I just started my journey a few months, and I'm really enjoying it. I think if you think that it's something good for you, for sure, try it. But also, too, it's very important that to realize that your skill set that you have can be an added value for companies as well.
Yeah, because as an entrepreneur, you just set up the JNL Recruitment, right?
Yes.
Initiative. Yeah. Okay. So what would you define as, say, 3 key drivers in building the entrepreneurial culture?
I was talking to a friend of mine, and we said that, being an entrepreneur, you need to always be able to perform at your peak. Obviously, being an athlete in the past, I'm always using terminology linked to that. So it's about training. It's about failing. It's about, then trying again. I think that's very important thing to have. I think also being able to network and utilizing your network as well. And I would say, a reflection. So knowing what you're good at, what you're not good at, how do you try to improve that? And how do you utilize other people to do so? If you look into a lot of successful people, they always talk about having a team, right, around them. And the team comes with different perspective. It's not all the same in terms of, maybe cultural backgrounds. If I look at myself, I have, 3 people that are very incremental in my building my business. One guy I definitely need to introduce you is Denny Tuia. He's currently CMO for different companies right now. Obviously, my wife, very important. She's the backbone of the family. And I also have another lady called Axel, who's my mentor. So everything I do, we talk to these 3 people, and we make sure that, they're giving me they're asking me the right questions, they're challenging me, and also coming with things maybe I've not thought through myself.
Right. I always say that a good coach needs to have coach, and that is definitely what I say. As a mentor, if you say you don't have a mentor or a coach, then I'm sort of, stay a distance, because you can't see yourself. You can't be taught, you can't be advised. So why do you want to advise someone else?
Yeah, that's a good one.
I think that the entrepreneurial culture within the African community, do you see any initiative? I mean, OMEC, for example, is setting a really good standard in terms of how we can build that sort of entrepreneurial culture in the Netherlands. What are some of the challenges do you see that the African diaspora community faces that you think is something we could address?
Well, I think one of the things, and I have to start with myself, is that, if you grow up in the western part of the world where there's a lot of involvement around processes and administration, sometimes lack of in, let's say, the African continent is really challenging. So I think, that needs to be improved. What I've seen over the course of the years, and I've been fortunate enough to have family members who have studied in abroad or in Europe or in the US, and then go back and try to contribute, physically being in Ghana or in Africa. So there's a lot of talented individuals also going back to diaspora and trying to make an impact. And I think that's very important. As I start my journey, I 100% know that there is going to be a point in time where I'm going to collaborate with a lot of, brothers and sisters who are currently in Africa right now, just by sharing my experiences and vice versa, or doing business. Because I also think that, Africa is a continent where there's a lot of opportunities and potential. And typically when you gain some kind of experiences, you want somebody to, leverage. If you talk about a lot of companies who are in a business transformation, I'll say as Africa has been in the business transformation for a few years now.
Yeah.
You need people to help you, move to that next step. And I think a lot of people in Africa, but also a combination of, African diasporas who are now in Europe, who have gained insights, in either entrepreneurship, either in the corporate level, either in the education system, can also bring something back. And we talked about this in the summit as well. How can you uplift others? I think that's also very important, to uplift others. Because at the end of the day, if you can do that, it's only going to be benefiting for the people who are coming behind us. And I think that's very important.
Right. Do you see a difference? I think last time we discussed a little bit about the thinking of the first generation.
Mm-hmm.
And the second generation, like yourself, myself, and others who sort of the young professionals and the professionals of this time who are thinking of going back home. Well, that maybe is already one example of the difference between, say, the first generation and the second generation. Do you see any? What to you is the major differences or points of points of conflict or points of agreement between, say, the first generation, like your and yourself?
I think the first generation one is well, obvious to me, and I hope a lot of people can agree or can see this as well. Is that we were brought up in a situation where you have to listen to your elders, right? Whether they're right or wrong, you have to listen to them. So you have to take it, and then at some point you may disagree. But I think that's also a very challenging one, especially if you are brought up in a different country where you have gained different perspective. Now I can, have conversation with my dad and bring my perspective. But I think, 10, 15 years ago was a different conversation. Although he may be wrong, he was not going to admit it. But now, having experiences and also teaching them to have a different perspective or open into receiving different perspective is very important. And I think for us, second generation is that you have different insights already. So the way I see it is, when you have different insight, you should be able to make a better decision, or you should be able to improve your situation. I think for me, my parents, when they came to the Netherlands, they made an effort into understanding the educational system, right? So obviously having kids going to school, how does it look like? What do they need to learn? My dad always showed up in my reporting. He wanted to understand from my teacher, how am I on track? What can he do to support? So he was a very advocate when it came to the education system. So I think that's something that we, also second generation, need to foster, because education is a very important vehicle, in my opinion. It brings you at least to a certain level where you can at least read and write, and then you can make decisions also on your own. And then finding a passion in something that you can do is also a big plus. And I think the conflict that we have is, not being able to, have the space to also share your opinion or point of view. I think that can be a challenge, especially if you look at the two generations.
Right. And the first generation, they are never compromise on these issues in terms of, well, these are the values that we want. Never forget that you are Ghanaian. Never forget that you are Cameroonian. Where it is that you're from, no matter whether or not you are living here for the last 20 years, there's always a reminder of knowing where you come from.
Yeah,
and I think that's important in a sense, right?
Mm-hmm. No, that's very important. For me, what I say now is that my mother is Ghana and my father is the Netherlands. I cannot choose between the two, right? I know who they are. right? I know what they told me, what they both told me, the good and bad. And I'm trying to utilize that into, whatever I do nowadays. So that's how I, that's the saying that I use now in terms of, having a mom and dad and the Netherlands and Ghana being, my mom and dad.
Right. Hey, we are at the 1 hour mark and we're coming to the close of it, and I have some more lighthearted questions.
Okay.
So one thing you wish you had known when you started your career?
Oh, one thing I wished. I think, wow, that's a good question. Yeah, I think that having a career in a corporate space, that it can be tough. And having more role models at a younger age,
right.
Or looking for role models at an earlier stage of my career who can help me navigate.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's something that a lot of people would share. When you started your career, you wish you really had some mentors at the start, or wish you had actually had the ability to listen to mentors if they were there.
Yeah.
Because that is sometimes our weak point when we start, in terms of taking advice from those that have already passed. We think that we already know so much that is there. Yeah. And what has been your biggest challenge, and what did you learn from it in your journey?
Ooh, my biggest challenge. I think my biggest challenge has been that I'm somebody who really trusts. Trust is very important to me. So I'm somebody who trusts very quickly. And I've learned the hard way that, trust can be broken. And that is something I really learned, I'll say, the last 5-6 years. So it's given me a different perspective. Is that you need to build a relationship before the trust comes. But trust is very important to me as well. And, I take people for the face value. I try not to have a lot of perception. And then I try and fill in the blanks a little bit later. But I think that was the biggest learning for sure.
And that has really been helpful in your job as talent acquisition broker as well, of course.
Yes. I've learned to ask a little bit more questions before trusting, and not always go by face value. So I think that's something that I really learned the last 5 years for sure. Yeah,
definitely. What advice would you give to, say, a young entrepreneur or a young human resource professional who wants to get into human resource?
Yeah. I think the first advice is that talk to a few people who are doing the job. So whatever direction you want to go, talk to people who are doing it, because they can give you a lot of insights, and then based on those insights, try and formulate what is good to do. I learned also a long time ago to make sure that you always present your best self. So because at the end of the day, people are always people are having perceptions of who you are. So make sure that whenever you have to present yourself, you're presenting your best self. And also it's your work. When you do work, make sure you do your best work, because your work will speak for itself. So those are, I'll say, the two things that I really would give as an advice to a lot of people. And, I can add more things about networking, having a mentor. Those things I can definitely throw in there as well. But, make sure that you present yourself in the best possible way. Know what you're articulating. If you're not a subject matter on a topic, say, hey, I don't know. Do your research and then come back. So that's what I would say.
And one last interesting question. What's the one thing in human resource development no one is talking about today?
The one thing nobody's talking about today. Ooh. I think the use of analytics. I think analytics has been underutilized within the HR for a long time. There are some companies who are doing a good job. So using analytics to, predict, forecast, population, really analyzing and working with leaders within the organization to make sure that, even from a developer standpoint, people are getting the right development that they need. So I would say, the use of analytics is huge and is underutilized within the human resource for sure.
That's a very interesting aspect. That seems strangely missing, especially now that you mentioned earlier that there is a redefinition of the way human resource work needs to be done and can be done because of the fact that a lot of work is moving online. But that does not change the fact that work will still be done face to face. That seems to be strange that aspect is not taken seriously within the field, within your field.
Yeah, and I think it has to do with investments. A lot of companies sometimes are not investing in the right tooling to make sure that, that those analytics can be done. It's not always cheap per se, but you need to also think that is very important. And what you see is that, even global companies sometimes work on different platforms, which is not easy to make sure your analytics is, seamless. I've seen some changes happening with a lot of companies, moving to one platform where all the information from employees can be, tracked and inserted, which will help them make better analysis. So the companies who want to make a difference are definitely going to use that. And I think, again, the culture aspect of any company that people want to be part of for sure.
Yeah, and I think talking about analytics as well, that could help even in identifying possible talent within the diaspora community. And I like what Kemo did with OMEC, with the demographic analytics, what he did.
Yeah.
For the categorization of the diaspora community, a brilliant way of sort of creating that kind of a demographic that can actually pinpoint specific groups within the diaspora community for which you can work at identifying possible talents. I think that's useful.
Yeah, and I think he's smart already by including it in the platform right now, because as the platform evolves, there's going to be an important element, the analytical piece. If you look at, let's say if he reaches 100,000 talented individuals, where are they originally from? Where are they located? What are their profession? How many years of experience they have? These are all interesting things that he could potentially provide insight in, and that's going to be very key as his business also evolves.
Yeah, absolutely. There is a lot we could talk about. Thanks a lot for joining me on this episode of Impact Mindset Podcast. It was a real pleasure talking with you and providing my audience an excellent view on diversity, inclusion, and the marketplace. How can people connect with you online?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure speaking to another brother. And, this is the way that we help each other and we evolve and we learn. I'm on LinkedIn, so people can catch me on LinkedIn, Kobi Ampoma. And, my email address is also in there. And, I always connect with people. I'm always open to sharing insight. So, if you need anything, just connect with me on LinkedIn.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot. And I'll post the full episode on impactmindsets.com and with your LinkedIn contacts and for details can join you. And the initiative, the company that you've launched, of course, JNL Recruitment, will have you can plug that on the website as well.
Will do. Thank you.
It's an absolute pleasure, Kobi. Thanks a lot, man.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to Impact Mindset, where we build a community of relentless entrepreneurs. I hope you enjoyed the show. Stay informed and visit our website on impactmindset.com and follow me on Facebook and Instagram at FonBruno15, on Twitter and LinkedIn at FonBruno. If you are interested in private coaching and courses on startup strategy, ideation and concept development, contact me via podcast at impactmindset.com or visit my website at fonbruno.com.